right. I want to thank Pastor Jose Sanchez and Shannon Martin for that special song. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Neone, who will be sharing with us our devotional thought for this afternoon. Melissa, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I thought it would be fitting that we talk about, when we think of ministry, we usually talk about the story of Nehemiah, and I thought that would be fitting for this evening. But right before we begin, I'll just say a quick prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to come together as leaders. Father, I pray and I invite your spirit into this place. May you help us that we may be connected and be united in the spirit of truth and in the spirit of faith. And so, Father, I pray that your presence may be here. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So the story of Nehemiah can be found in Nehemiah chapters 1 and 2 that we're focusing on today. Just quickly, I'll give a brief synopsis or summary of it. But on your own time, I pray that you find the time to study it. And this will really give you lessons for ministry and empowerment. Nehemiah was a Hebrew exile. And so he was a cupbearer to the king, pouring and serving drinks. In order to have such a role, you needed to be trustworthy because you would be going in and out of, the king's throne, wherever he was. You're always around him. You didn't need to be admitted. You would just show up when you need to. And so at the time, Jerusalem had been destroyed. And so the walls were in ruin. And so the temple services were now disturbed. They weren't able to praise and worship the way they needed to be. And so just Jerusalem had to be rebuilt. And so it was through Nehemiah that the holy purpose of God would be fulfilled. And so Nehemiah waited 4 months. It took him 4 months of trouble his conscience was troubled. He knew he needed to say something to the king to be able for this holy purpose to be fulfilled through him. And so anyways, he waited 4 months, and it was 4 months of prayer. See, in the hour of combat, in every circumstance or under every condition, it is the duty or it is the resource at command for every Christian to exercise. And this will give us support. It will give us peace, and it will give us the assurance and the power from God. So he implored the help of he implored the help of God. He didn't just fold his hands. See, a person of prayer must be a person of action. Faith comes with works, and without works, faith is dead. And so the king approved, and he made all the arrangements necessary for Nehemiah to be successful. And so he prayed in faith, he worked in diligence and fidelity. Sometimes we hinder God's work by assuming that every difficulty or any difficulty is a sign that whatever is happening is not of a religious character, but this is a big mistake. And so Nehemiah started working, and he came upon one difficulty after the other. It is the duty of every Christian to exercise every power to make mature plans, because they are essential to success. And it's the duty of every Christian to exercise every faculty, every gift, talent, and resource to the work of God. You must work to your fullest potential for which you were created. And so what we need from God is power, but the work is for us. And so we are co-laborers with God. And so that is what Nehemiah did. If he was lacking in something, he would solicit the help of others around. And so that's what he did. He one man, but doing all that he could to make sure that the walls would be rebuilt. And so the work of God is not for the faint at heart. God has the ability to make the faint or to make the timid bold, and those who are ignorant wise. And so God needs people who will rise up and have the courage that Nehemiah had. And so today we're briefly going to touch on 3 things that we can pick up from Nehemiah's story. That's 1, character decides destiny. Number 2, power is from God. And lastly, encountering obstacles. And so we're just going to stop at Nehemiah, or where the story ends, or where we're going to stop is Nehemiah chapter 2. Character decides destiny. Nehemiah's position opened the way for him to be able to speak to the king and to be able to fulfill the plan that God had for him. But not just that. See, an accomplishment or your ability can get you in the door, but what keeps you in the door is your character. So it was the character, the fact that Nehemiah was in the position to be able to be the king's cupbearer was because he was a trustworthy man. So it is his character that allowed him to have that position that was then channeled to be the means in which God was to fulfill his plan. And so what God is calling for are people of character. He's not looking, you're not qualified because of your accomplishments. You're not qualified because you've done it in the past. You're not qualified because of your abilities or gifts or talents or resources or money. You're qualified because God qualifies you. And how does he do that? He works on character, the transformation of the mind. Now, character is actions repeated, which form habits, which then are turned into character. And so that is character. So our character is what determines the big part of life, which is eternal death or eternal life. Our characters also are needed in ministry. In anything that we do, everything has an impact on what our end shall be. And so character defines destiny. So the question is today, who are you? What is your character? What are you? Who are you trying to be? Are you resembling? Are you reflecting? Are you revealing the spirit of Christ? Right. Number 2 is power from God. Nehemiah waited 4 months pleading with God. He didn't just sit there. He was troubled, but he would always find strength in communicating with God. He was praying, he was pleading, he was doing all that he can. And so what you have to understand when you're doing ministry is you're entering forbidden territory. We are in the devil's playground and we're trying to do something that is totally contrary to his purposes. And so when you enter ministry with the idea that difficulty is not something that is natural, you're mistaken. It's a big mistake. You're on the devil's playground and you're there to take what belongs to him and give it to Christ, which is being a minister, being able to be a witness for Christ, that others are brought to Christ. And so our problem shouldn't deter us from doing God's work. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. It may be challenging, but keep going. Sorry, my voice. Woo. And last, woo. Sorry. And lastly, I'm out. Wow, the devil's a liar. But my voice is gone, guys. But lastly, wow, yeah, it's gone. Wow.
Take a sip of water.
Thanks, Melissa, for your devotional thought thus far.
Yeah, it's gone. Woo! And yeah, wow. Yeah, it's gone.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your powerful devotional thought on Nehemiah. We really appreciate it. And hopefully your voice comes back and you're able to comment during the town hall. And we'll certainly be praying for your voice at this time. We're going to turn it over to Pastor Ivan. He is pastor of the Timmins, but he's also the supervising pastor for Northern Ontario region. And so we're going to invite him to offer the prayer. And if you want to unmute your mic, you can go ahead.
Let's go. Our loving Father, we thank you for this Sabbath and thank you for the opportunity of being gathered together now for this session. Please be with all of us and please guide us, Lord, as we seek to make an impact in the youth of Ontario and to everyone in this province. Please be with us and send your Holy Spirit and be with everything that is said in our midst. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Ivan. And by the way, Melissa is the youth leader, the lead youth leader for the Hamilton East Seventh-day Adventist Church. And she and her team are doing a powerful job there at that church fellowship. We want to thank her for her ministry today. We hope your voice gets back soon. I'm going to turn the mic over to Alvia. She's going to, I know that you've had a very interesting day. Some of you probably have had a number of meetings. You've probably been in a number of events. And so just to warm us up, before we dive into our discussion, want to ask Alvia to lead us into a fun exercise, what we call icebreakers, just to kind of get us warmed up and moving, thaw the ice a little bit today. Alvia, go ahead. She's the Vice President for our East Central region and also our new president for the Mustard Seed ACF Club in downtown Toronto.
Thank you, Pastor Scott.
One thing that I can say I've learned from all of these Zoom meetings is that less is more. So in our little reflection icebreaker today, we're going to work on that principle with the one word game. So how this is going to work is I'm going to ask a question, something like, give me a word that is your favorite color. And you're only able to answer using that one word. So not everyone has to participate for every question, but just pop up, send something in the chat, turn off your microphone, turn on your microphone, sorry, and say your answer. We're going to start with something easy. Give me a word that is your favorite animal. So go for it. Okay, I see a horse. What else? What are your favorite animals? Dolphin, red panda?
And feel free to unmute your mic.
Yes, please speak
Want
up.
to hear your voices.
Alpacas, dog, owl, lion. Alrighty. So with that, we'll move on to the next question, since everyone seems to know how it works. The next question is, give me a word, one word that describes your quarantine experience.
Painful.
Painful. I hear laughing. Is laughing a word? Are we going to count that? Fantastic. What else? One word to describe your quarantine experience. Different. Nice. Existential. Okay, that's another good one. Reflective. Any other words to describe your quarantine experience? All right. Oh, family. Okay, that's a great one. I can tell you there's been a lot more family in my life since quarantine started. Projecty. Good word. Stressful. I see an in the beginning and the end there, but that's breaking the rules. One word. The next question is, give me a word that is your favorite way to spend Sabbath. So one word that's your favorite way to spend Sabbath. I want to hear some voices. Give me a word that is how you spend Sabbath.
Sleeping.
Sleeping. Okay. Thank you, Akil. Anyone else?
Singing.
Relaxing.
Relaxing. Nice. Singing. I see lots of connecting and nature in our chat here. Resting. Okay. That's another great one. Anyone else? How do you like to spend Sabbath? Disconnecting. Okay. Worship. And other voices of how you like to spend Sabbath? The next question is along that same Sabbath line. Reflect on today. Give me one word that describes your Sabbath experience today. I'll start it out with my one word. Exciting.
Eye-opening.
Perfect. Thank you, Pastor.
Peaceful. Communion.
Well, thank you. Communion. Anyone else? Give me a word to describe your Sabbath today. The next question has to do with youth ministries. So give me one word you would use to describe youth ministries.
Dynamic.
Dynamic.
I was actually going to say ACF, but that's not a word, it's an abbreviation. So I chose dynamic instead.
Thank you for that explanation. I see eventful, constructing, and challenging in the chat. Anyone else? How do you describe youth ministry?
Relational.
Relational. I love that. Beautiful. And our last question, and I hope that I hear from everyone on this one, give me one word to describe the incredible Pastor Scott, who has brought us all together for this great discussion today. One word to describe Pastor Scott.
Single.
I don't think we should comment on that. Anyone else?
Not for long. Amen.
Conversational.
Thank you. In the chat here, I see committed, zen, inspirational. What are some other words to describe our wonderful Pastor Scott?
Friendly.
Friendly.
Admirable.
Admirable. Beautiful. I think that's a great word to stop on for the rest of the evening. So thank you so much for participating in this little fun activity, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conversation.
All right, thank you very much, Vilmara, and thanks all for sharing your thoughts today. Got a chance to get to know you all a little bit more. For those of you who are just coming on, wanted to, if you could put your cameras on, that would be great, just so we can see your face, because at some point we're going to be opening the floor for you to ask questions and even answer questions on as well, so that it benefits all of us here in the room. Wanted to welcome each one of you to this, our second town hall. It's an opportunity for our youth and young adult leaders to be able to have conversations with each other and to talk a little bit about what they're experiencing relating to their youth ministries, their young adult ministries in the local churches, as well as ministries in the unique ministries around Ontario Conference. We want to thank for what you have been doing over the last little while. It has been a very tough experience. The season has been very tough. COVID has not been easy, but it's nonetheless a time when God has kept us going so that we could be serving him in a way that is meaningful to him and to the cross, and of course for our young people, to give them the support that they need during this period of time. I know that many of you have joined us in our Hope line. You've expressed some of your frustrations and some of the challenges that you've experienced as you serve in youth ministries. You've talked about how our pastors have supported you. You've talked about how the church has rallied around our young people, and our younger generations are that age demographic or age demographics that has sometimes been left or pushed aside, just so that church could still happen, activities could still take place for the benefit of the entire church. But as it relates to young people, our young people are leaders of today, but certainly leaders of tomorrow as well. And someone mentioned to me that they're the future tithe payers. So we got to watch out for them. I think that was Kwame who had mentioned that. We got to watch out for them and support them best way that we can. And I've heard a number of really powerful stories over the last several months since we met back in early May. And I've heard some very challenging conversations about how things have unfolded for our youth and young adults, as well as our leaders. I've heard that some of our leaders have checked out. I've heard that some of our leaders have gone through some very tough experiences, mental health, burnout, and so much else. that has affected them because of the COVID season. But today, because we're talking about the first conversation had to do with what we could do during COVID, and still we're in this same pandemic, and we still need tools to keep us going and keep us supported, and to keep us in the know and be fresh, and to be more effective in our craft and in our ministry. But this particular town hall is especially for those of our churches that will be going back to the physical building. Many of our churches are indeed going back to the physical building itself. And there are some things that our youth leaders need to know, and our churches need to know as well, our youth especially, so that they may be, they might avail themselves of the information that is out there, and know what to expect. So today I have a loose number of items that I wanted to share with you. They're not in heavy detail because I really wanted to hear your voice and to hear your frustrations. Before we get into any of those, I'd like for Sister Maria McLean. She is our health as well as prayer ministries director at the Ontario Conference. And she's here to share with us some safety and health tips that could assist us in our ministries as we transition back to the church and to some level of normalcy. So I'll pass the mic over to Sister Maria, and she will share with us some of her thoughts on that. Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, sorry, I thought I had unmuted my phone. I'm sorry that you're just seeing a silhouette of me. I'm actually on the road, so I am trying my best to be safe and also to share with you. I thought this might be better done in a question and answer format, but I thought I'd just do make some general points, and then if people have questions, I would welcome them. And if I can't answer them, of course, I'll point you to the place where you can find answers. Many of the guidelines for opening the church are on all the public health sites. So if you're in Ottawa, Toronto, wherever you are, they're all basically the same because they're operating off the same general guidelines that are for everyone everywhere. And there's some things that you'll need to custom make for your own context. But generally speaking, most of these things can apply. Now, one of the things that we need to be careful of is making sure that before we go into the actual physical building, that it is thoroughly cleaned. And I'm sure you'll be working with your other leaders, with the pastors, with the janitorial staff to make sure that this happens. Churches have been sitting idle for a while. Dust settles, we don't know what's in the dust. They haven't been aired, so things have been gathering, microbes have been gathering, and you just want to make sure that the church is properly cleaned. It'll be a bit more of a challenge because of places that have pews with fabric. Fabric needs to be steamed and then disinfected. So that will take a little longer, but this needs to be done. Microphones, as you know, people speak into them and all your saliva, all your droplets go into them. These should be cleaned properly. There's a solution that can be used to clean them without damaging the actual mechanism that makes them work. So all those should be cleaned, all your surfaces, the bathrooms, everything properly cleaned. The consoles and the AV booth, everything. So once that's done, be prepared to go back in batches. If you're from a small church, well, then you might be able to go back without having to do it in batches. Because we have to remember the seating arrangement will be changed. People need to sit far apart. Unless you're from the same household, the same bubble, well, then of course you sit together. You can sit together. And of course, the important thing then to remember is masks. Everyone should be wearing masks when you enter the building. And this might be a little awkward, but it is recommended that you keep the masks on even when you're doing singing. And as a matter of fact, let me back up a bit. Singing is confined to a praise team, and even with the praise team, ideally you should be singing with the masks on, because you're singing. If you're singing with the masks off, it means that all your droplets are going into the microphone and then going into the ear. If you have a barrier, that might help, but not all churches were able to erect a barrier, either on the podium itself or in the area that separates the rostrum from the rest of the church, the inner part of the church. So that is important. Sing with masks on. I know it might look odd, but I know in funeral homes and some other places, services are conducted with the masks on. You have to have the masks on. I've gone to funeral services, I've gone to visitations where once you get in that building, you keep the mask on until you leave. So pastors who are officiating at funerals need to keep the masks on. And I think we need to practice that in our churches as well. This is important because this seems to be the way to contain the virus right now. And we need to cooperate. I know there's some people who may not think it is necessary, but this is very, very, very important. Maybe that would be a whole session on its own if we have time for that. But the other thing is protecting, screening and attendance log. People need to be screened, and these things are all on the sites. I don't need to go through them with you. You can go through them. There's a lot anyway to go through in this short time, but screening and attendance logs are important to maintain. Attendance, because you want to know if there's an outbreak or somebody's infected. You want to be sure that you can trace that or contact the individuals who were in the building at the time that this person was in the building who was infected. So you want to be able to trace that, and that will help public health as well. So screening, cleaning the facilities, the masks. The other thing is protecting everyone. So the physical distancing must be maintained. And the people in your high-risk populations need to be protected. So even when the churches are fully open, some have been opened already, we need to make sure that high-risk populations still stay at home and worship virtually, because you want to protect them as well. You don't want to expose them unnecessarily. And those are the general guidelines, the general headings. Now, under each of those headings, a whole lot of information that covers protocols for each of those headings. So I just covered the main ones. I know I only have a short time, but if you have questions that I can answer, now is the time. I'll see if I can show my face a little bit here. Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
When you wear mask, when you're singing or wearing the mask for so long, doesn't that mean that you're inhaling carbon dioxide that you're breathing out? And if you already know that you've been tested and you don't have it, is it really, really necessary? Even when you're in the building, spaced and everything, is it necessary to wear the mask the whole time?
You're on mute.
No,
On mute.
no, I'm not.
I don't know what happened. I must have touched something. Sorry. You asked a lot of questions there, and the answers will be yes and yes and yes. First of all, the masks are necessary. They are mandated by the government, public health, and we're just trying to cooperate to make sure we contain it. Number one. Number two, what was your other question?
You're inhaling
but the
carbon dioxide.
carbon dioxide, that is not a concern. I've checked studies by pulmonologists. I've checked studies by other experts. That is not a concern. It's not, you're not going to be in the building for 24 hours. You're not going to be in the building for any extended period where you're actually good, where that would be an issue. It is an issue if you are breathing into a plastic bag that is sealed around your mouth and you're constantly breathing back in that carbon dioxide over and over again for about an hour or two. But masks, while they seal your mouth, they are not, they are not occluding your mouth and nose to the point where you can't, where carbon dioxide cannot escape. It is not an issue. It has not been proved to affect your oxygen saturation. And you're not in the building long enough for that to be a concern. I'm not sure if I answered the other question that you had, or you might need to repeat it for my benefit, because there were a number of things you asked at once.
It's all right. You answered the important one. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question about
I'm thankful that Queen asked that question, because I believe a lot of people have asked that question as well. So it's good to have a clarifying response. Go ahead, Andrew.
I know in our workplace, we offer our clients the option to wear a face shield as opposed to a face mask.
Right.
In this context, would that be permitted, or is a mask the requirement?
It said face coverings, and actually masks are better. Of all the face coverings, the mask is the better one. Shields are good if you're going to be exposed to splashes. You know, you notice that a lot of that healthcare professionals in acute care centers will wear shields because they're exposed to body fluids. People sneeze, people vomit, people, you know, there's blood and whatever. So the shield is worn, but in addition to the mask. The shield on its own is a bit uncomfortable, and it does not provide the occlusion you need. It is better than nothing. And if for some reason you can't wear the mask for whatever reason, then the shield is better than nothing, but the best would be the mask. And if you wear the shield, then wear the mask with the shield. But the shield does not provide the same protection. It is open a little bit more, and secondly, it is very uncomfortable. People talk about wearing masks for a long time. Well, try wearing a shield for a long time. It's a lot more uncomfortable. So masks will be number one. Any other questions or comments? Now, and I can't see the chat, so I'm depending on Pastor Scott or whoever is hosting to let me know the questions. But the main thing with with worshiping in a building is to make sure that you follow all the guidelines outlined by the public health department. They're all there. Just read through them. I know the church risk management, Kevin sent out some guidelines as well. These are really the same, and they may expand a little bit because of our context, but if you follow those, you should be fine. And you know, I think part of the question, if I recall, was, you know, if you tested and you're sure you're okay, well, why do I still have to wear a mask? Because we might be okay for 2 weeks and then not be. You know, people might get retested and might be negative once and be positive at another time. Plus, you want to be sure that you are protecting others, and optics are important. You might be like as healthy as any number of horses put together, and but you know, if everybody else is wearing a mask and you're not, you know, that sends a message that you're not honoring the request of public health to wear a mask, and it might look as though you don't care about the health of others, and they might not know your history. They might not know that you've been tested and you're negative. That doesn't matter. What matters is that everybody else is wearing a mask and you're not. I don't know if that makes sense, but any other concerns? I know it's a short time, and and this period is dedicated to answering questions on this area. But if there are other questions that you think of after this call, and I'm able to answer, you can just ask Pastor Scott to pass them on to me, and I'll pass the answers through him to you as well.
I just wanted to confirm if you said the information with regard to the guidelines are on the conference's website, and we can simply go there and read all the details.
Right, and I believe they may have been forwarded to you by Pastor Scott. The leaders have been given the information. Pastors have been given the information. So if you have questions, you can check with your pastors as well.
Thank you.
All the pastors have been given the information.
And that's correct. There's tons of information on the website at adventistontario.org. There's an entire section there specifically for COVID-related issues and information that you need. And you could always go there. We'll probably drop it into the place here, the message box, and we could also post it online so that you could have it as well under the Facebook post of this conversation.
Is that it for questions for me?
I would just like to clarify. So
We'll take one more question. Go ahead, Queen.
Sister Maria, I'm just like to clarify. So you're saying even with the building clean and with physical distancing, sitting separate outside of. Okay, even with the building cleaned and with the physical distancing in the building, like families together and separated, the mask is still required, really?
Yes. Okay. The mask is still required, even though you're separated by in a pew and whatever. The mask is required because you're not going to sit there all the time. Somebody might come up to you and talk and ask a question. Building, you're not going to stay in the spot. So it is just, to me, it is a small pay for for containing the virus. I know a lot of people have questions about the mask because they're saying, oh, it's my human rights being infringed upon. They're forcing me to wear a mask. And, back in 2003, 2004, when we had the SARS, this is SARS 1, this is SARS 2, actually. Public health begged us to follow certain infection control measures. Keep your hands clean. Use sanitizers. Sanitizers came into being in hospitals, in public places. And that was a small price to pay. And in a short time, the virus was contained. We had 44 deaths. Now that's 44 too many, but it was nothing compared to what we're experiencing now. In a short time, it was capped. People cooperated. People washed their hands. People might say, well, that's an infringement on my rights. Somebody should tell me when to wash my hands. But it was a way of containing the virus, and it came under control. And further loss of life was prevented because people cooperated. A mask is a small price to pay. I read an article by someone who was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis and somebody else who has chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. These are people who would say, well, I have a reason not to wear a mask. But these are the individuals who are wearing a mask because they recognize the importance of wearing a mask. And they're the ones who have respiratory issues. But they recognize that by wearing a mask, they're protecting others, while others who are wearing a mask are protecting them. It's a two-way thing. It's a small price to pay. And I think we can be leading the way as Christians by cooperating with public health agencies. Many of the other pandemics in the past were brought under control, some of them by vaccines, but some of them were brought under control by following public health measures that were recommended by health authorities. And you can do the history. You can do your research. You don't have to take my word for it. And even God Himself, when the Israelites were leaving Egypt and on their journey from Egypt to Canaan, God gave Moses a set of instructions, public health, infection control, if you were, infection control guidelines that help prevent epidemics.
Yeah.
There were certain things, if you had an infection and it erupted on your skin and there were lesions, you have to go and be in quarantine, and then you had to show yourself to the priest after the quarantine of a certain period. If you had to use the bathroom, you were supposed to go away from the camp, dig a hole and do your business, and then cover that hole to prevent flies from going there and having a feast and then transferring the germs to the food. So these were public health measures. These were infection control measures that God established for the Israelites, and they never had a problem. The only time they had a problem was when it was a result of punishment or something. They disobeyed or something like that. But once they followed those guidelines, all was well. So a mask, I know people are making a big thing about it, is only a big thing if you make it a big thing. Is a very, very, very small price to pay. And as Christians, I think we should be leading the way with cooperating with health authorities.
One more question, please.
I mean,
one more question,
for those people, again, who say it's an infringement of my rights. I mean, we could use the argument that is an infringement of my rights to drive my car the way I want to drive it. I feel like, taking my car anywhere. I don't have to stop at traffic lights. I don't have to obey signals at all. I don't have to wear seatbelt. I don't have to do anything. Sure, you can, but then if you're doing that, you're putting other people at risk. And when our personal freedoms infringe on other people's personal freedoms, then that's an issue. And I think we should think about these things when we are looking at the small thing that we asked to do in wearing a mask.
One more question,
All right.
please.
Okay,
I know I went on there
quick.
for a little bit, but
we're running behind time.
I just wanted to make sure that we understand that this is important for us to work with the health authorities. They're not asking us to bow down to a golden idol, a statue. They're just asking us to cooperate with everybody else and bring this under control. Because at the beginning, the mask was not even on the list. But now, because we're learning more about the virus and the droplets can be propelled in the air and potentially infect somebody else, this is where it's important to wear a mask.
Okay, last question.
Is now mandated.
Last question. So in a case of our congregation where it's very small, say
it's all
less
quiet
than
back
10
there.
people. You can't hear me?
Are there
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Scott, or comments in the chat?
Okay, and the last question is, in the case of our congregation where it's very small, say
it appears that Maria is not able to hear you, Queen. Maybe you want to write it into the chat, and then maybe we can send it over to her so that she can hear it. All right.
Hello? Okay, never mind then. But will they be coming to check on us while we're worshiping?
Maria, did you hear that question?
Will they be coming to check if we're wearing masks? Because our congregation is very small. We could space it out where we don't have to be near each other or get around each other. Will they be coming to check is my last question.
Okay, it's doubtful that Maria is able to answer that question. So I'll just mute for a moment. And if you can post that question into the chat, then I'll send it over to her and I'll have her send the message. Kwame, could you just send that message, email, sorry, that question over to Maria, and then maybe later on in the meeting, she can answer that question for us. All right, there'll be some other time for question and answer. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Maria. We can't hear you. I'm sure you can't hear me. Okay, I'll just put you on mute for a few moments. All right. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing these ideals with us, Maria. I truly appreciate the presentation that you've given to us today. All right, let's see. All right, my screen seems to have given me some trouble. All right. All right, there are a couple of areas that I think are worth our while as we talk a little bit about as we have this discussion today. A couple of areas that I'm sure you've been thinking about as you transition back to the church setting. One area would be in the form of leadership, and I think you could see me. You may not be able to see the presentation, so I'll just run through it. One area has to do with leadership. Us being able to refocus, rebuild, and also recharge. That's a key area that we would need to focus on as leaders. Each one of you have any number of leaders working with you. Some of you might have a few leaders working with you. Many of you might have, whether you're in a unique ministry like Compassion or ACF, you have teams of persons. And also for those who are in regions or even in your local churches or even on your public campus, you have persons who are working with you. And each of these persons, I'm sure you have spent considerable amount of time having conversations, revisioning, taking a look at your calendar, seeing what's possible from what's not. And I think that's something that all of us as leaders should be able to do. And of course, that's the reason why we're hosting this town hall, so that we could be part of the conversation of revisioning. But one of the leadership tips that I wanted to share with you, and I was hoping that I could show it to you on screen, has to do with the fact that we ought to pray. Prayer is an essential tool that connects all of us as leaders to the leader of who has called each one of us to be part of this great work of ministry. And it's important that we place all of our plans and all of our struggles and all of our frustrations on him, because he's the one who gives to us new vision, new strength each day for the road that is yet ahead. And we will need more strength as the weeks and the months pass. We're already hearing that there will be a second wave, and maybe even a third wave. Some are saying that we may not even get a vaccine by the end of this year, maybe into the new year. And we're doing the best that we could as people, as citizens, to abide by the guidelines that are out there. And of course, that's our part to play to keep everyone safe, ourselves and our family, our friends, those who are around us, and to be stewards of what we have, and to be faithful in doing so. But praying is a big thing. Another thing is that we want to recharge our leadership, and part of that has to do with visioning, reviewing the vision that we had set at the top of 2020. I'm sure that you looked at 2020 and said, this is what 2020 will look like. And 2020 didn't, of course, turn out the way that you like it to be. I've seen some memes online saying, "Hey, I'm done with 2020. I'd like to have a redo at some point." And they're kind of funny, but hey, that's the life that we're living in. It's out of our hands, it's out of control. But there are some things that we can do in terms of the conversations that we could have with our leadership team about where we go from here between now and December. And of course, what happens, contingency plans between December and January, or later on in 2021. Another thing that we would need to do is look at our teams. There may have been some fracturing where our teams are concerned. Persons may have left, they may have given up, and we have the bag, the empty bag holding as leaders. And so we may need to go through a process of recruiting new persons, new blood, new individuals, persons with new ideas. We may want to bring on an elder or speak with our pastor to join the team, or persons who we know are really passionate about young people and can help in key or very significant ways. Another aspect would be to get the resources that we need. It might be a new Zoom link, or it might be, new Zoom license, for example, or some document that is out there, or some book or video, or persons who can come in to our team and help us to sort of coach each other, so that what we do and what we give is more effective in delivery. We'd certainly want to communicate to our young people. One of the things that I've discovered through COVID is that while we're away, and while we're sheltered in place, one of the best things that we can do is to speak with each other as often as possible, and to share as much information as possible so that people are apprised and updated about what's to come, the issues that we're facing and how we're managing them and how we're navigating through them. These things are important. I can tell you on the pastoral level, or in the conference level for pastors, that we've hosted several workers' meetings to apprise pastors about what's taking place, what they ought to know, what they would share with their boards. I'm working with a particular region in Ontario and speaking with pastors. They're saying, man, we've gotten so many emails. They're coming left and right from different departments. Can it be centralized? And that's a good problem to have, in part because they're receiving as much information. Some people might say it's an overload of information, but it's better to have information than to not have information at all. And so having these conversations, sharing information through text message or WhatsApp, email, or whatever, Slack is another one, or whatever medium that you feel is best, that you can approach your youth as well as your young people to keep them informed and apprised of everything that is taking place, when the church will be transitioning in, and who's a part of the 30%, who could be at the worship services, etc. These things are important so that people don't feel like they've been forgotten, or that someone is withholding information from them. So transparency is a big thing. Of course, you heard about some of the health best practices, masks and so forth, which Maria just mentioned. Many of you might have seen churches spraying down their podiums, etc., and people who are using mics to be able to have their own mic, what have you. So it reduces the risk of anyone contacting or contracting this COVID virus, all in the name of us being as best as we could faithful stewards to and for each other. Of course, a final thing about leadership, another leadership tip that you might want to be aware of is the fact that funds are an important aspect of it as well. And I know that with COVID and us not meeting as often as we have been before COVID happened, came to have arrived on our doorsteps, that was not necessarily a big problem. Now it is. And so we may need to speak to our higher leaders, our pastors and our elders, to pick up a special offering or create some kind of creative approach to raise capital for any events or initiatives that you would like to do for your young people. As it relates to ministry, this has to do with the engagement and the enlightenment or the empowerment of our young people. This is the actual work where our youth and young adults are concerned. This is the development of them. This is the empowerment of them as well. This is the spiritual ministry to them so that their lives are developed. They increase as Christ did in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. When we spoke last, we talked about various creative approaches for worship services, and we gave you some ideas, some ministry development or talent development. We also gave you ideas on empowerment activities and social activities and outreach activities. These things you want to be able to think through now that there's a bit of transition taking place. What is possible from some of those ideas that we shared? We can share those once again so that you can take a look at them. But as you take a look at what is possible in your church, it has to be measured by, of course, how many youth you have, what's available out there, what's the cost as well, the timing just the same. So you have to sort of sit down and figure out what is possible, and be able to deliver those as effectively as possible for your young people so that they don't feel neglected. One of the things that we have talked about here and there with different ministries is the great opportunity for innovation. COVID allowed us opportunities to be innovative, to be creative, and to do things that we wouldn't normally do outside of the pandemic. As you look at your ministry, what are some of those things that you have been innovative, that you have created because of necessity? As they say, invention is the necessity, sorry, is the mother of invention. Because of the necessity of being sheltering in place, being at home, and most of your services or all of your services are through some kind of online platform. What has God inspired you to do throughout COVID, the pandemic thus far, and you're still doing it, that you want to see happen in your youth ministry as things transition? I can think of an example for that I think has blessed me in my own life. We started through the Ministry of Compassion to do Compassion Hope Line, and it's sort of a prayer meeting kind of initiative that came out of the Global Youth Day program back in March. Every Monday night, we host this through Compassion. People come, they share their praises, their testimonies, etc. They have a prayer. They can break off into a prayer room and someone can pray with them specially. And they can hear how God is moving in people's lives. I'd like to see something like that happen, even as we transition from sheltering in place to transitioning into more of a physical space with more people. And there may be other ideas that you have seen or you have developed. I know some regions have, and local churches have done IG conversations, and they've talked about social justice issues or issues relating to women in the church or what have you. I think those conversations should continue because I think they can remain consistent. They could be a part of the programming of your ministry. People have gotten used to them, and it could be a part of the new normal that doesn't seem as if once we stop it, it creates a disruption. So to be creative, consistent, and of course, collaboration as a part of the whole idea behind innovation. There are many ministries out there whom we can partner with, both within our church, in our community, and around the conference, and even beyond the conference, Ontario Conference, whom we can work with to do new things for our young people to bring glory and honor to God's name. And so these are some of the things that I wanted to share with you, and I hope that you can consider them. We can be able to share these with you after our meeting, but hopefully they could be part of the discussion that we have for the next few moments. And so the questions that I had, which I wish I could show you, but for some reason this thing has frozen on me, is here are a couple of questions. What approaches are you using in this transition period That's one. Number two, how successfully are you making the transition back to the church setting? Number three, what challenging factors have you prohibited or frustrated your smooth transition? How does burnout play into your challenges? And of course, what can your church or conference assist you with to make this transition a lot smoother? So the floor is open for your discussion and your thoughts. Please feel free to share. We want to hear your voice. Who will go first?
I can.
Andrew, go
Here.
ahead.
So I'm assisting with the youth in Belleville. Janelle, who's also in here, is in this meeting, is in charge, and I've assisted with a few events we've had so far within the past year since our last retreat. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to have any in-person events since March or earlier. We did have one successful Zoom meeting or virtual AY. I believe it was in April, and we played a Kahoot game and read from Hosea and had a good session there. We haven't had any of those sessions since, but that's the extent of our ability to do youth meetings at this point. When it comes to our church reopening, we are opening our church again on September 5 for in-person services, and that'll be 30% capacity, which in our case is 24 people in the sanctuary maximum. That's also our main, that's the only part of our church building that will be open to the people. The classrooms and the assembly room will not be open, even for youth meetings at this point. At least that's from what I've heard, being a part of the safety team. If Janelle, if you've heard anything different from pastor or the safety team, please correct me, because, but that's about as far as I've heard at this point. So we're still not in a position to do in-person events, but what has worked so far is using the technology of Zoom, which our church is already using for Wednesday night prayer meeting and then Sabbath school and church, both on Sabbath mornings. That technology is working well for the church, so I believe that would work well for the youth, especially with interactive games and things that make it really fun that way.
Now, you said you only had one meeting or one event with your youth? Is that what you had said?
From what I've heard since this pandemic really started, since March, I believe. Yeah.
Since March. And what were some of the challenges that limited your meeting up?
Meeting up with the building, well, not just the building, but at that time, the no more than gatherings of 5 or more were not permitted.
Right. And what about online, meeting online? What have been some of the challenges there?
Challenges would be, well, mainly making sure that each of the youth has the means to connect, and a reliable connection or a device that they can connect with. Because
I see.
many that would join us wouldn't have that technology. They wouldn't have those devices. They'd have to share or borrow with their family, and that wouldn't work. Doesn't always work out well.
There's been like a competition between senior members of the family and the youth members of the family as well.
That's right. So the youth, if they don't have their own smartphone,
right,
it's the basics to get on, and they don't always have that.
I see.
So that's been the biggest challenge. But I think the biggest solution to that would be utilizing the technology, because at this point, even though our church is reopening, the area of the church in which we would have the youth meeting, that particular area is not going to be open, as far as I've heard.
Right.
Only the sanctuary.
Very well. Anybody wants to respond to Andrew's commentary in terms of his experience? You can jump on in at this point. If not, if you may have another question. So Andrew, your start back will be the first weekend in September, and it'll be at 30%. which is 24 members, you're saying?
24 individuals total in the sanctuary. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
And,
thank you so much.
I'm
All
also
right.
I'm gonna share a link in the chat, but that's maybe there'll be a time to discuss it later. But that's what sort of my thoughts on youth ministry as a whole.
Okay, awesome.
But I can share that later if the time comes.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. All right, Andrew from Belleville Seventh-day Adventist Church. All right. Anybody else has an experience there? Maybe we can hear from some of the churches, from some of the leaders whose churches have already started going back. I know they've started going back in the last couple of weeks, maybe in the last month, generally, or since the end of July. Share with us your experience, what you've seen, some of the challenges, and where you think this might be going, if it's a sooner full capacity, or if there may be some limitations leading up to it.
So I can speak on behalf of Peterborough Church. Peterborough Church has been open since, oh gosh, I think the second week of July is when they opened, perhaps the first. Up to this point, we've had service every Sabbath, and we have also had a wedding take place there. And some of the guidelines that we followed are the things that Maria mentioned. Masks must be worn, especially when singing. People are sitting distanced. We have a greeter team at the front of the church whose job it is to ask the questions that are currently the screening questions given by the health and the policies that are out there right now. They are also required to turn someone away if they don't meet those requirements. So it's not really a fun job, but it's essential for keeping us all safe. We are still encouraging members to participate in the Zoom church. So we're not at full capacity. I think Peterborough Church can have up to 39 members. So those who have difficulty with connection or difficulty finding the technology to use to connect into a Zoom platform are invited to come into the church and participate in that way. Otherwise, we have Sabbath School and Divine Service partnership, which is digital and some in person. One of the things that I want to encourage everybody is that lots of youth Sabbath schools have taken different platforms during this time, and perhaps they can continue to do so even as we move into a back to in-person format. My mother and I, for the last 2 weeks, have been running a beginner Sabbath school class just in the backyard, just separated with in nature. And that just is one way of being creative. Perhaps the same thing can be done as well as the weather stays warm with our youth, teens, young adults over the coming weeks.
Very well, Alvia. Thank you. What number did you say your 30% is?
So I believe the number is 39 people.
39 people. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And you're saying that you still have to do sort of some kind of a hybrid for your youth.
Yeah, we still do a hybrid, not just for the youth, but as well for Peterborough Church has lots of senior members, lots of members that are experiencing severe health conditions, and we encourage them and enable them to worship from home so that they can be safe, so that we can look after them. And I think that's what's best for our church at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Alvia. Jewel, you wanted to say something. Juvelisa, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Pastor, and hi, everyone. In part, there were just few, as you know. We're like more than 20s as we worship regularly. But so far, when the COVID-19 came, it's still a bless because we are in our virtual worship in the Sabbath School and Divine and EY. We're still almost in the same number, 20 to 30. And sometimes we have visitors from, regularly we have an elder from Guyana. So he came and joined us like almost every Sabbath. And for our ministry, like evangelism, we have some things like the conference give us, I think, the goods and the foods. Just this week, I came from work and I picked up some food, some plastic bags with foods from Sister Flavia, and I called my friends, I dropped by the foods to them, and then two ladies called me back after I give them their foods, and they say, Juvie, there is a people that in need that he doesn't have work, so I give my portion to him. And the other one also, the other lady, she says that, oh, she has a friend and she has kids, and I told her that I think also of giving your friend, but I haven't met her, but I saw her last time. I thought of her of giving some groceries, and then she said, I can give mine. I said, okay, you can drop by to my place and get your part. And then she gave her part also to someone. It's like share from them that we doesn't know to the people that they know. They give their parts just to share what it came from our conference. And that's what we did. And for children and youth, we do also like giving some books, no, not books, like drawing books, crayons, we send to them, to the children and youth that need. So that's what we do despite of this pandemic that we have, but we're still working, doing it a little bit, not too far, not too much, but we have done a little bit. That's what we did in Parkdale. And some of our brethren are doing their works too. We are giving some like gift cards from elderly to the people that they need. So that's what we did in our church.
Very well. In terms, so you spoke very good about the evangelistic or the outreach component of things. Are there any plans for returning to the physical space for worship services, or small group youth, small group, or even socialization?
Yes, that was planned already, like September 1. September, yeah, it's like first Sabbath of September. That's what we planned and talked with our board. So that was planned. So we'll see what's gonna happen next.
Very well, very well. Thank you very much. We'll take a couple more
You're
comments
welcome.
in terms of what's taking place with your church and how things are unfolding for you. If you're still having more of a hybrid service, or if some of your churches are just hosting still from the beaming from the church. Like last week, I was with Metro West. I spoke for them, and all 14, 15, 16 churches came together for worship. There are a few people, I'd say maybe about 20 persons in the congregation who came to worship, and then you had all the praise and worship people standing off to the side, and the musicians and so forth, and they were beaming from the church or broadcasting onto Facebook and YouTube. And everyone else, of course, in their homes were listening on. So there may be some churches, I suppose some of the more larger churches might continue to do that. But our smaller churches might already, they may have already started worshiping from the church building. Anybody else? All right. What are some of the frustrations that you feel are there already as you go through this period of transition? For those of you who have already started, and for those who are yet to start, the conversations that are taking place with your upper leadership, what are they saying, and what are some of the limitations that you're experiencing thus far? Floor is open for further comments. We'll take a couple of minutes more before we close out. and welcome to the call for the new additions to the call today. All right, everybody seems to be shy today. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to go to Akil. Talk to us a little bit about what's taking place for our students who are on public campuses, and what are the limitations, the challenges, and maybe some of the frustrations that our leaders are facing as they turn their attention to school for the fall.
Thank you there, Preacher. I think as it relates to students, there's a real frustration with our leaders over being able to adapt and adapt well to ministry. I will admit it's maybe a little hard to see ministry being actualized, considering that most campuses as of September will be virtual. Some students will choose to stay home. Some may go to their university town still and still be on campus, depending on if they have to be in class or not. For those that have labs and things of that nature, there's one or two schools that are going to be hybrid, so there'll be a combination of online and in person. A lot of the colleges are doing that because college has a lot of hands-on courses. So there's a real frustration out there regarding being able to actualize. And we want to be able to encourage our students to know that to come up with great ideas that will still allow them to minister while still being able to make friendships and create community. And we think a lot about our first year students. They're going to have a university experience that is unlike any experience any person currently involved in ACF has had. So we really want to be able to meet their needs. And we want Adventist students to know when they're going to campus that they are not alone. And we say that every year, but this year, that loneliness might be felt more often than not, simply because they're going to be students in a new town on a new campus and not having a lot of face-to-face or a lot of person-to-person interactions. So those are some of the frustrations that some of our students and our ministries are having and are going to be having. So we're just going to keep them in prayer. In terms of what we're doing right now, where we actually have in the midst of a leaders retreat. So we concluded a session at 5:30 today. We will be continuing our final session of the retreat tomorrow at 7 p.m. And this weekend has really been focusing on encouraging our leaders, focusing on why it's important to build friendships and build community, build virtual ministries. We want them to understand that Jesus has overcome the world, and we want that to be a sort of catalyst as they prepare to do ministry virtually in the fall. So we've been focusing on that. After this retreat, we'll be focusing on releasing a guideline to our ministries, to the local chapters, so they can have a real sense of how to do ministry on a local level with these COVID guidelines that the church has. We'll also be releasing, updating, and releasing some ideas that they can pursue for virtual ministry and then in-person ministry that's socially distanced or in tune with COVID-19 restrictions. So there's a lot going on, and in your prayers, keep the campus ministry in prayer. There's also, I mentioned this, there's a lot of frustration because for students, there's just an uncertainty. We know for a majority of students, their class is going to be online in the fall. Some have a hybrid. Some don't know what that's going to look like. Some are concerned. We don't know what second semester is going to look like. We don't know if second semester is going to be online or in person. Persons still don't know whether they're going to be able to do co-op or whether co-op is going to be online and if that's going to give them the skills that they can get into the job market. We don't know if they're going to be able to do co-op. We don't know if they're going to be able to do internships, whatever they need to do. Being able to access post-secondary career options is also looking a little bit difficult. So there are a lot of frustrations, but our emphasis and our theme probably for the fall is going to be twofold: that Jesus has overcome the world, amen, and that even though ministry is not going to look at all what we thought it was going to look like, we can still go into the world and make a difference, whether it's scaled back in person or completely virtually. So those are just a few of the things. I didn't mean to take up too much time, but that's just a snapshot of some of the frustrations we're facing. in-campus ministries. And we encourage you and we beseech you to keep us in the forefront of your minds and keep us in prayer as we work with these new frustrations. You know, other frustrations I'll mention quickly that we're dealing with are lack of resources, you know, not being able to have rooms on campus, lack of funding because funding is dried up for everybody, possibility of getting sick, you know, church on campus, which is usually our reaping event, you know, is that going to happen virtually? Is that going to happen at all? So these are a few more things we just want to share with you, but keep ACF at the forefront of your minds. Thank you so much. You're muted, preacher.
Very well. Thank you so much, Akil, and keeping us updated in terms of how it has been or how it's going to be for our leaders on the public campuses, our Adventist leaders. Maybe I could call on Jonah to share a little bit about how things went earlier this month when we hosted our Compassion Outreach Initiative, in part because many of you might be thinking about ways that you could be doing some impacting of people's lives in positive ways, being salt and light, and still being effective in sharing Christ's love with the people around you. And Jonah can give you some of the limitations and some perspective in terms of how it unfolded, maybe some of the challenges leading up to, and if it is still feasible during the season, even in transition, if it's possible for us to still be effective in outreaching to people around us. The floor is yours, John.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's the same with Akil in terms of funding. I think definitely like when it comes to evangelism, you want to do so much more, but then there's a realistic slap on the face kind of thing where there needs to be money. But in doing so, it is feasible as long as it's realistic of what we can do, especially with protocols. So originally, when we were planning this, we want to do so many things. Like, for sure, we want to have the conversations, talk with people, still have interactions, give out water, but as well as feeding the homeless by making bag sandwiches and little packages. The biggest thing, especially with not only the financial aspect, when it came to feeding the homeless, it is the idea of like, if we make this, we have to follow the protocols. So how are we gonna prep this? Are we gonna be in a closed area where we can be 6 feet distance, sanitize everything from like inside out? So will we have PPEs? What kind of PPEs are available? What can we get, especially if we're not medical, anyone who's in the medical field? So having a full PPE is difficult. So these are things like that we had to consider. So when we had to revise it, we just left it as mainly have conversations, because we realized that everyone is in a virtual world, that there is still a disconnect, and people do long to have these conversations, even if it's just saying how are you or like what's up to strangers. It makes such a huge difference, even just having prayers. So we've made signs saying like free intellectual conversations, free prayer signs. We made small smile cards, and we made sure that those who had prepared them had worn gloves, have sanitized themselves, as well as the stations that they've made it, and as well as made gloves as well. And then we gave out water bottles. And when we did all of this in Toronto, knowing it's a hot day on the Sabbath, everyone is out and you have to make sure the distance, we made it not only in a station area to make sure that there was a 6 feet marker so people can wait in line, but also when we do it mobile, we have people have worn gloves and masks for the certainty of it, just ensuring that we just make that distance when conversating, and just to show like everyone like we can still do these things. In terms of that, what else? I think that was basically it when it comes to outreach. You just have to be very creative and really understand what the community needs are. If it's just having these conversations, because again, we're now living in a virtual world, there is really a dire need of like having in-person conversations. I think most of us have started to forget how to truly and genuinely connect with one another, because we're so used to the screen that we can hide ourselves. Our body language is just sitting down, really. Yeah, like it's just find creative ways, essentially.
Very well. Thank you so much, Jonah. Any comments or questions for Jonah and Akil?
I think oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I was going to comment to what Jonah was saying. I didn't even think about PPE, you know, but I think a question, one thing in ACF that I've been thinking about since April, and I'm constantly thinking about, you know, because they're not on campus, how does that, the vision of ACF has reached the campus change world? How much of our vision is now affected because we're not on campus? Granted, we don't need to be on campus to reach campus, but a lot of our work takes place on campus. So things like physical distancing and PPE, they can be a blessing and they can be a curse. We all understand it's the general public health we're trying to protect, but it's a blessing and it's a curse because some people are like anti-people. They're adverse to being around people. You know, even with masks on and gloves on, I've seen people in garbage bags. I've seen people with hazmat suits. They don't want to be anywhere near people. And it creates a real problem. It creates a problem because it gives us an issue in terms of how we do our ministry, but it also is an opportunity for us to be innovative. And so what I think what Jonah was talking about is really like her showing, it's a good demonstration of she had an issue and then they were innovative to address that issue, reach around the issue and still do what they were called to do. So I just wanted to make mention of that because that's a real problem that we are facing in our ministry, because each campus does their work differently and people in each city operate differently. You know, Toronto mans aren't like Ottawa mans, you know. You know, Jonah gets the joke I just made, but you know, so I just wanted to put that out there from what Jonah was saying.
And I guess with creativity and thinking things through, we have to be as intentional as possible. So intentionality comes into play whenever we're planning events or programs for our youth and young adults. All right, we see some faces on here. We see Matson, Shireen, we see Simone, we see Monique, Flavia, Sophia, Luke, Charles, Lorianne. I'm calling your names out, definitely. JL. Feel free, jump on in. We're going to be closing up in the next few minutes. Any questions or concerns, any frustrations that you've experienced, any challenges that you see yourself going through, you and your leadership team, relating to young people and how to minister to them during COVID. And now, as the church is looking to get back into the building, as it were, because it bears repeating that the church is not the building. The building is just a place that helps you to activate or to actualize or to do ministry more effectively, and it gathers people together for worship and discipleship and other important aspects of ministry. But the church is made up of people, obviously. But the fact that we're talking about getting back together at some point, there may be some hurdles that you need to be thinking through and some obstacles that you've already experienced. And so that's why we want to hear from you, hear your thoughts in terms of your own personal experience. Floor is still open for your comments or questions. We want to hear them and we want to take them today.
Hello, this is Maria here.
Yes, go ahead, Maria.
I just wanted, when I was stopped, I noticed something in the chat. I took a quick look at the chat. I'm on the road again. But one of the things that I saw was, you know, who's going to check if you're wearing a mask? I hope I read the question right. And so I want to respond in that context. to ask that question is like saying, and I'm, it's like saying, should I keep on my seatbelt only if I am going through an area where police officers will be? I'm going to keep my seatbelt on because it is the safe thing to do. And that's been mandated by the law. Not just, and even before it was mandated, I wore my seatbelt because it was a safe thing to do. In the same way, when we wear masks, it's not so that people can see if we're wearing them and if we're following the law. We're wearing them because it's the safe thing to do. And it is mandated because, according to the bylaws of all the jurisdictions, a mask is required in indoor places, and a church is part of that. So we're doing it not because of eye service or because somebody's coming to inspect. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and we're saving lives that way. And I hope that addresses the question or the concern about whether or not, we'll be inspected to see if we're following the rules.
My feeling is that all of us here are in agreement with that. I think the one person that was having a question on that, I don't think they're a part of this call anymore at this point, what I can see. But
oh, okay, sorry. I just didn't want to leave it hanging. I just wanted to speak to it. But we're speaking to the choir right now. But in case it comes up, people will mention those things, and we will have people who will want to come into the building without wearing a mask. And as Alvia pointed out earlier, we might have to do the unpleasant thing to turn them away. And that might not be pleasant for everybody involved, but is something that will have to be done. It's just like if you're going to a grocery store. Grocery stores, if you're going in there or any of these buildings, they'll have a mask for you. If you don't have any, they'll sell you one. I know I went to one of the grocery stores. They're selling masks for $1 because that's the requirement. It's an indoor space. And if we can follow those rules in grocery stores and in every other enclosed area, what's the big thing about following it in our churches? We should be leaders in this way, in this area.
our church in Belleville will be providing masks for any of the members who show up and don't have one. We'll be providing one for them at the door if they don't have their own.
Yes, good stuff. But thanks for allowing me to be part of this conversation.
No problem. It was a pleasure to have you, and thanks for your contribution. Really informative, and it adds to our conversation here today.
Pastor Scott, can I just say something on that?
Sure.
One of the things I learned in the ACF training meetings today was this idea that we could potentially bring young people together and even be sewing masks, because the resources are available and the information is available online on how to do this safely. And I just want to touch on what Maria is saying. Instead of fighting the policies, even if we do find them overbearing or we think that that wouldn't be the way we would personally choose to go, instead of fighting what is being given to us as health guidelines, we should be leaders. We should be the ones handing out masks if that's what the government is saying is the safest way for us to go ahead with this. Let us not be a hindrance in our community. Let's just be shining stars, because we are called to be a light for Christ.
We thank you, Alvia. Pastor, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, speaking to what Alvia said, that I often think if I get infected, I think I have good chances of making it. But if I infect someone, I think about my members here at the church, and all of them are, or many of them are elderly. So we may think about ourselves and think, oh, I probably would be fine, but we can just spread to someone that may die. So if we think about that, it is not a big deal to use a mask or something like that when we think about the lives of someone.
Very well.
I agree. I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah, I like the whole citizenship aspect of it. We are brothers keepers, and we work for the betterment of everyone, and that's a good thing for us to do.
And we're also being compassionate to those who adamantly refuse to wear a mask, right? By providing online church services through Zoom. They're welcome to attend those, and they don't have to wear a mask whatsoever. Isn't that
Right.
true?
And they can pick them up in the safety of their own home. All right. Any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
Shireen has a comment.
Yes, please go
I'm
ahead.
just wondering, I know that there was the reopening guidelines given by the conference, but how many of our congregations actually did their own survey with their members to see what their membership had to say about reopening, how and when? I know we did at Ajax Church, but was it something that was mandated that each congregation should do their own? And the representatives of each congregation online here, did we all do a survey of our local congregation as to how and when our reopening will take place?
I can't speak with clarity, but I know that there has been some discussions between churches and risk management, Kevin Benta, and his office, in helping them navigate what it means for them to return to some kind of normalcy in the church setting. I assume that there has that an assessment or some kind of survey is a part of the bargain. I don't know to what extent, but I do know that there's a number of documents that have been sent out with multiple pages with as much information as possible for churches to be able to follow them. And I know that a part of their following them, or at least the guidelines, identifies the fact that they needed to outline their own plan. So it's sort of a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Because every church, is different from the other church.
And that's what I'm getting at, because it's okay to have the high-level document, but it's very important that we take the time to, make sure we're meeting the local congregation's need, because it's not a one bill fit all here, right?
Right.
So even when we're talking about mask, will you wear mask or will you not? Those are things that have to be, in place when you do reopen. It's not like, well, if they come and if they don't, whatever. We have to know, mask, yes. If they have one, yes. If they have one, what are we going to do if they don't have one? All the simple things around the cleaning, the sanitizing, the lack of handshaking. How long do you stay outside the building after the service? And, all that stuff, the percentage, whatever. So locally, everybody needs to do that. It's important because every congregation is different. And I can tell you from the result of the survey that we did for Ajax, we're not going back into our building until Thanksgiving weekend. And even then, only divine service will be in the building.
Right, that's my understanding. Very short services, no lunches,
That's
very
right.
spaced out in terms of what you do.
Yeah, and we allowed our membership to say which services they think should still be online, and got the feedback from them, and all that stuff. It's so important to do it locally as opposed to just looking at the big document from the conference. That was just my input.
If I may say
document
something
is a big document that gives guidelines,
right?
General guidelines.
And
Go ahead, Maria.
if I may say something from the point of view of the administration, the document is a broad document. Each church will then have to, custom make it then for their own congregation. There's some things that are non-negotiable. For instance, you must wear masks and things of that nature. You have to clean the place and all that. But there's some things, because the go ahead, the green light was given to go ahead and open the churches, doesn't mean that everybody will do it, because some churches have larger congregations than others. So you'll need to know your church and what you can do at your church, and work to suit your own context.
Agreed.
That's right. Thank you, Maria. Flavia, you're on mute, off mute. Do you want to ask a question?
I have a question. This doesn't really impact our congregation because we are from a small church in Parkdale. But I'm curious as to how the churches who will return at a 30% capacity, how would you manage who attends church? Will this be on a rotational basis? Because I'm trying to conceptualize how that will go. Who manages that kind of attendance?
And that's something that will be done locally. Each church board will have to decide how they're going to do that. Are they going to do it by alphabet, whatever? That is something that each church will have to decide on locally. It is not something that could be mandated by the conference administration.
I can speak to the example Belleville is choosing to do. For our reopening on September 5, we will be having, and now this hasn't been done yet, but this is the plan. The plan is to have all the members who want to attend RSVP. Then on that day when they show up, if their name's on the list and they've been approved, they can attend. Otherwise, and if there's more than that number attending, then I'm not sure who will eventually, I assume the pastor or some elders will make a decision on who comes and who doesn't. If we exceed the 30% capacity in RSVPs numbers, it's not, but there will be RSVP, and only those who apply in advance will be welcomed in that day.
And it's first come, first serve.
So
Most likely, yes.
So
Okay.
you would probably have some kind of a hybrid situation where you have some people still doing Zoom worshiping or live streaming, or
The live streaming will still take place regardless.
Okay.
And so the service, some members can attend in church, and anyone or any number of others can watch online.
Okay. Perfect.
Very good. These are all good questions and commentary. And thank you all for sharing them and for asking them, because these questions give some, at least they're thought provoking, so that we could begin as leaders in our local churches, begin answering those questions and what's possible for our youth and young adults in our local church community. We're pretty much past our time, and I wanted to share this with you. Let's see if it works this time.
And Preacher, make sure that when you share the screen, you're sharing the sound through the computer. When you click share screen, box pops up at the bottom. It should say share audio through computer. That way we can hear it through.
Sorry about that. My system has been
not alone. From before time began, you are not alone. You are not alone. And right now, in the good times and bad, you are on your throne. You are not alone. Trouble surrounds me, chaos surrounds me, but I will rest in you. Rest in you. I will not fear the Lord. I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way. Help is on the way. My help is on the way. Oh my God, He will not delay. My refuge and strength always. I will not fear. His promise is true. My God will come through. Always. Always. Unchangeable, unshakable, unstoppable. That's who you are. Unchangeable, unshakable, unstoppable. That's who you are. You're unchangeable, unshakable, unstoppable. That's who you are. You are God. Before time began. On your throne. Right
All right, thank you so much for Our Windsor youth, that was Pastor Jephthah and Lodu and his team with Dean, as well as Casey and Kristen singing along. You are God alone. These are some of the slides that we didn't get a chance to show. And these are some of the references that we used earlier in the presentation that you can take a look at when we send them out. And these are some of the discussion questions that we went through throughout the rest of the evening and through the discussion. As we close, just a couple of announcements that we want you to be aware of. Akil, do you want to say anything about our ACF Ontario Leaders Retreat? It started on Thursday evening and it continues all the way to tomorrow evening. Akil, you want to make a comment on this?
Yeah, just quick 30 seconds. Its theme is go forth into all the world, because we're encouraging our young people that Jesus has overcome the world, so we can go forth, claim his gospel on our campus, reach the campus, change the world. So it started on Thursday, it ends tomorrow. So if you have student leaders or even students who are attending university for the first time and like to get a sense of what ACF is, they can attend this event, and we're promoting it on Instagram and on Facebook. And we have some more exciting news to share with you, but I can't share it until tomorrow. So just stay tuned on our social media, on AYO social media, for the special news that we have that I'll share with you all tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, for those of you who would like to who have young people who are attending public campuses, and you'd like them to be involved, you'd like them to be a part of a campus club, where Young Adventists are getting together in fellowship and also reaching the campus and reaching the world.
Changing the world.
Is the mantra for ACF, and that's the hope for our young people who we consider as missionaries to these public campuses and being an influence there. If you do have young people who are on these public campuses in Ontario, let us know. We want to know so that we could plug them in and get them to be involved. This flyer is from last week's Hope Line, but Jonah, you want to say a little something about the Hope Line for this coming Monday at 6:30 p.m.? Go ahead, share with us.
Sure. We're continuing. It's still within the series of transparency. We have one more compassion member who is going to be sharing her relevancy, or like how she is relating to one of the Bible characters. So it's truly a blessing with Hope Line. So I just encourage anyone to join in, spread the word of joining us at Hope Line as a prayer line, but also a time where we can connect and just be with one another this time.
And they have been truly a blessing. People have been blessed by them, the experiences, the testimonials. If you want to join, let us know. The Zoom information is down below, but we could also send that if you send us a message, compassion@adventistyouthontario.org. We'll get back to you with the logins. You don't want to miss this final one. All right, thank you so much, Jonah. Really appreciate it. Since the social justice conversations, the 2 social justice conversations that our teens ministry has hosted the last 2 months, they've intended to host several hot topic conversations throughout the rest of the year. One for this month, which will be on Saturday, the 29th of August at 7 p.m. We'll be right here, same YouTube and Facebook. You'll be able to catch our teens covering these hot topics this next weekend, which is the 29th of August, will be on the subject Women in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And you'll hear from pastors and young ladies who are doing powerful things, not just here in Ontario, but also from the United States as well, and from other parts. And they're just sharing their experiences, how they've served and how they've ministered, and just being an encouragement to many who sense in themselves a call to serve. So that's a conversation that will be taking place next week, Saturday. So keep that in your calendar, and remember to swing through, tune in, and hear some of the discussion points, and also offer some of your thoughts on some of the ideas that are being shared. This conference has this particular one, Virtual Communication Summit. This one started on Thursday as well, and will finish or conclude tomorrow evening. This is hosted by the communications department, and they've asked us to promote it, to let you know, so that you're aware of what's taking place. And you can tune in. You can go to Ontario Conference, the Adventist Facebook page, and you can see some of the login information there. You may have received it in your email. If you're subscribing to OCN, which is a weekly send from our communications department, the login information is there, I believe, and you can tune in just as well and hear how you can utilize communications tools, social media, to share the gospel of Christ to the world around you as well. And that's coming from Christel Agboka, who is our communications director. And then finally, Ontario Conference is hosting an event called Urban Mission Convention that's taking place on September 11th to 13th. And this this particular weekend in question relates to how our churches could be revitalized in a way so that they could effectively serve their local communities in big as well as large, small cities and towns, wherever they are. So keep that in mind. This is a free event, by the way, and you can get information from Ontario Conference's website. We've had some conversations leading up to it to create conversation, but also excitement and create interest so that people can figure out where they'd like to go and what sessions they'd like to receive information from. And if you're interested in church planting, there's a segment there for you as well. Ontario North American Division Evangelism Institute will be with us that entire weekend, and their professors and trainers, they'll be our special guests hosting this event with us. And so if you have elders and leaders, and if you too, as a youth leader, would like to be involved, you can be able to do so. And I think that's it for announcements. We will close. If you've enjoyed the fact that we've had these conversations, this one today, as well as the one back in May, please let us know, and let us also know what you would like for us, other topics for us to discuss. If you feel that the town hall is an effective means to not just share information, but also to engage our youth and young adult leaders, please let us know, because we want to be able to not just inform you of new things coming to you, but also to hear your frustrations, your hopes, your dreams, and what God is doing in your life. So thank you all for being a part of our discussion today, and we will bid you farewell and a great evening, as well as a wonderful new week. Be a blessing wherever you go, and may God's name be praised through your life, through your words, through your actions. I'm going to invite Brother Akil to close us out with prayer, a prayer of blessing as we close this town hall tonight.
Thank you, preacher. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we're so grateful for the opportunity that you've given us, that we may gather together at this time to simply talk about our concerns, our fears, our frustrations, our hopes, as it relates to all aspects of youth ministries. Thank you for every single person that has watched and participated in this Zoom call, whether here on the actual Zoom line or on YouTube or on Facebook. Lord, we pray that young people may have been inspired by this conversation, that the work that you presented for us may not be seen as a burden, but rather as a joy to be meant to carry out. We thank you for the opportunity to minister in our respective fields. Lord, I pray that you'll be with each and every single youth leader, young adult leader, compassion leader, ACF leader and president, communications personnel. I pray that you'll be with every single person who leads out in a youth ministry, who contributes to youth ministries at a conference level, and that the work that you've given us may be continued to be pushed forward, that we might accomplish the motto of the Advent message to all the world in this generation. Lord, we thank you for your leading in this ministry. We thank you for Pastor John Scott. We thank you that he is our youth director, and we thank you that you give him the endurance and the strength and the passion to do the work that he is doing. We pray that you will continue to be with him. May you bless him from the crown of his head to the sole of his feet, that every work and everything he does may be reflective of you, God. We pray now that you'll dismiss us with your presence. Be with us as Sabbath is drawing to a close. And we look back on this experience and say, it was good to fellowship, it was good to discuss, it was good to be together because it was in the name of Jesus. And so, Lord, we pray that you will continue to be with us. Dismiss us with your presence until we should be back together, is my prayer in Jesus' name, and according to your mighty, matchless, infinite will, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Akil. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. God bless you. Have a great evening. See you again soon.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
See you
Bye,
later.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye. God bless you all.
God bless you, Maria.
Okay.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.